Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Jessica Ray.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 301. I'm Jessica Ray, and you might know me as MotorWeek's digital producer. I'm also the podcast producer, and today I am standing in for the legendary John Davis as podcast host.
Where is John? Where in the world is John Davis? Somebody call in.
He's an undisclosed location. May or may not be in Europe.
He's taking a well-deserved vacation. So joining me in the studio today here in Owings Mills, Maryland, is Brian Robinson, Greg Carlos, and Alex Kellum. Now, this March has been very busy for all of us in the automotive world.
True.
We have all been traveling all across the country for a plethora of first drives. So we're going to talk about
Mostly San Francisco area. Because
California.
Everybody's been, they've been getting the most rain, and it's like everybody, for whatever reason, is,
California in March was actually terrible weather.
We're not used to having to check the weather when we're going to California. Normally I'm just like, whatever, I'm sure I'll be fine with whatever I have, but now it's an actual thing. So.
Exactly. So we'll talk about three.
Nice sidebar.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that's why we do the podcast. We give an insider look.
So we'll talk about three new vehicles that we have driven. We also have a lightning round about how some autonomous and semi-autonomous technology is potentially going to be used by Ford. And then we have a viewer question about some of our procedures and things that we do at Roebling Road Raceway.
This can't be good.
And then we'll see if anybody has a rant or rave at the end. So starting off, we're going to start with Dodge, who this is their first new product in about a decade, Brian?
Sounds about right.
Since the Dart.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so the all-new Dodge Hornet revised nameplate. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So, yes, small crossover. Why in the world would Dodge make a small crossover? Well, they currently only have 3 vehicles in their lineup, 2 of which are about to cease production, leaving them with just the Durango. So if you're going to expand your lineup, certainly the hottest segment that continues to be growing, small crossover is where you want to be. So the Hornet is indeed that, based on the Alfa Romeo Tonale, the small crossover from Europe. It's actually going to be built in Italy, not based on a Jeep, which is maybe a little bit surprising. But, Dodge is all about performance, and that's really what they wanted to focus on. So standard is a GT, Hornet GT, 268 horsepower, 2-liter turbo, and Koni shocks standard, starts at about $30,000, all-wheel drive standard. So super well equipped for $30,000, and you can add stuff on top of that like a track pack, which is mainly just looks. Really, it gives you a sportier interior.
A lot of the packaging, the optional stuff was like appearance. So
Correct.
A lot of stuff comes standard.
Yeah, you really can't get many performance upgrades. Even the brake upgrade is just painted calipers.
Mm-hmm.
So that is pretty stout for they call it the fastest, most powerful, quickest, whatever adjective you want to use, SUV you can buy for under $30,000, which the numbers seem to back that up. Step up from there is the RT, which is a smaller 1.3-liter turbo-based, but it is a plug-in hybrid with a pretty sizable rear-mounted electric motor, which gives it a different all-wheel drive setup. Not much horsepower, a few more horsepower, but almost 100 pound-feet more torque, 383. And I think fairly impressive 30 miles of EV-only range. So, and when it's in EV, when you're in EV mode, it's all that rear electric motor. So you're essentially driving a rear-wheel drive vehicle at that point in time. And so anyway, it handles well. It looks okay. Definitely looks. It's got a lot of the Dodge styling cues they put in. It's a little bit of a rough ride. It sounds loud at times. All things that Dodge is all about. The RT is like low fives, 0 to 60. The GT, mid sixes. And the RT starts at about 40,000.
So that's kind of about right for that size vehicle and with a plug-in hybrid powertrain compared to, say, like a RAV4 Prime, which would kind of be its competition, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But this has way more performance than the RAV4 Prime. Especially, it's got a power boost function where you hold the right paddle and it gives you like an extra EV shot for like 30 seconds or something like that. Pretty trick, well thought out vehicle, I think. The interior, plenty roomy. Definitely looks sporty inside.
Does it have that like Fiat snarl to the engine like we've heard in Abarths?
Yeah, the 1.3 liter for sure. You put it in sport mode. It pops and cackles when you let off the gas.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And that is the PHEV then?
Yeah.
That has the pop. Man, that's cool. That's even cooler to me. Although I will say, like, I don't like the idea of the paddle so much. Like, I wish it was a button, the boost button. To me, you need the NOS button, right? No, you don't pull a paddle for NOS. you push a button. Yeah.
Well, we actually recently had the GT in for a road test.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't get to go to California. I only get to go to North Carolina.
That's right.
They keep me stuck on the East Coast.
One
day. Yeah. So you brought it back, and we did our full
and they made you
testing
drive back.
No, I'd much prefer that anyway. So that's all good.
So you spent a decent amount of time. Now we had a lot of us, we've experienced the GT, but
right.
You got to experience the RT.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels way faster off the line with that electric boost. Actually driving it, it doesn't really feel that much quicker in everyday use, but certainly off the line it does. The RT is actually going to be a 24. That won't be out for a little while yet. But the RT is neat in the fact that it has clear personalities. Like when you put in sport mode, the engine stays on all the time. You get that exhaust note, stuff like that. You put it over to like EV mode, and it's like driving an EV. It's nearly silent. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a all-purpose small crossover.
I assume you can charge the battery while driving.
Yeah,
the engine.
Yeah. If you put it in sport mode, it keeps the battery at like 80%, just so you always have that boost shot. Yeah.
Well,
Sweet.
Well, great. Now let's move on to another product that has been a long time coming for a brand that pretty much started mass producing EVs, right? Nissan, with their Leaf that came out, 15 years ago at this point.
Yeah, I went on that launch.
And
is that in California?
No. That was down in Nashville.
15 years ago?
Well, I think the 2008? 2000, late 2010,
I'm not sure
2008.
I'm just,
I think it was about
my
that.
life is flashing before my eyes right
so
now.
15 years
I just
ago.
make sure that it's
The march of time is
never
ending.
ending.
right then.
So, I mean, they're now following up with their second all-electric vehicle, the Ariya. Now, our first taste of the Ariya was very short. I drove it like a year ago at the New York Auto Show around Central Park, so I didn't really get a good feel for it. But now they're launching the all-wheel drive version of it, and you got to drive it, Alex.
I sure did. I went out to California. Rained
course.
Rained when I flew out there. Rained when I flew back. The day we got to drive was nice and sunny, though. So.
Lucky duck.
Yeah, well, a lot of flooded roads, so there was that too. But yeah, so as we've alluded to, we've kind of already driven the Ariya. We've seen the Ariya before in its form, but the E-Force, it is E-Force, not E4-Orse. The name may confuse
that's really
you.
Weird, yeah.
Wait, say that again?
So here, you can even look at my paper. E-Force.
It's E-4.
4 Orse.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just replaced the F with a 4.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it right the first time. I thought you guys were saying it was something different.
Yeah, I was just,
I catch your drift.
being
there,
a
Nissan.
little facetious, but no, it's fine. But yes, this is the all-wheel drive finally making its way to the Ariya. So I don't want to talk too much about the Ariya as a whole. I'll make a few comments, but I really want to talk about my driving experience with the E-Force. So
Please do.
it doubles I guess the hat trick here is that it doubles the torque that you would get with the single motor drive system. So now you're up to 442 pound-feet of torque, 389 horsepower. I think it's 0 to 60 is like 4.8 seconds or something like that. So yeah, it's a very robust system, or at least it's up to par. That is with the larger battery, because you can get it with a standard range battery, and I'll get to ranges in a second, but with the standard range battery, you do get a little less punch there. 335 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque. Still respectable, in my opinion. It's still fine. The standard range battery, it's 63 kilowatt hours of usable battery, and the extended range, which is what I spent my time in, was 87 kilowatt hours of usable battery. So with the standard range, you're only looking at about 205 miles of range. And then when you get the extended
right around
range,
BZ4X and Lexus RZ.
Right, and then when you get to the extended range, you can get up to 272. So, a little bit more. And the thing with all these numbers, I said it in my first drive, and I'll say it again here, is like they're all fine. They're not jaw-dropping. They're not like going to blow you away, but they're fine. Like, I think they're competitive. What really sets the E-Force apart, in my opinion, is how the E-Force performs on the street. And we did like a little agility course at Sonoma Raceway with like a wet hairpin and like a slalom and like all that fun stuff. And for the most part, you could basically just pin the throttle or the pedal. I don't know if are we calling it throttle?
Call it throttle.
Yeah.
You pin it to the floor, and it does what you want it to do. The thing they were saying is it carves the line that you intend to take, and you really do get a feel for that. And in previous press materials, this is like old press material when I wrote the quick spin from when you drove the one a year ago, it said that the E-Force was a spiritual offspring of a system known as the Atessa ETS, taken from none other than the Nissan GTR. I am not going to dare make that comparison. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, let Nissan do it.
But I will say that it makes sense that, a company that is known for such a legendary all-wheel drive system, would still have a very robust system. My favorite feature, though, of the E-Force, this just kind of shows who I am, I guess. When you brake, so the rear motors apply some of that braking for the regen brakes. And what that does is it mitigates vehicle pitch. So when you're coming up to a stop, you're not like leaning forward in your seat. And the whole idea is to kind of prevent motion sickness, which as a driver, I don't really experience. But when I'm in the passenger seat, I get motion sick.
Same.
So that's why I picked automotive journalism.
All right, yeah.
So I think it's a really cool system. If you need something, for further credence of the all-wheel drive system, they're doing a pole-to-pole expedition right now with the Nissan Ariya. They've put some big meaty tires on it, and they're going from pole to pole. What exactly that's going to prove, not entirely sure, but it is kind of cool.
Are they going to the magnetic North Pole or the geological North Pole?
Look, it's pole to pole. That's all I got for you.
Magnetic might cause an issue.
So, I mean, as we alluded to earlier, it blows my mind that the Leaf has been out as long as it has, and it's taken them this long to bring out a second EV. It's like you would have think they'd be 3 or 4 vehicles into it by now.
I mean, it's not out of character for Nissan, though, considering how long it took them to give us another Z, and they kind of held on to a lot of things for a long time. But I mean,
the GTRs.
they eventually do deliver. It
15
just
years,
ends up taking a while longer.
And I think they do it right for the most part. I mean, I think the Ariya, they've done it right. They are aiming right now at 55% global products with electrification by 2030. That's going to be 25 new electrified products, 19 that are going to apparently be just all new in total. So they are starting to ramp up. They're trying to get to that point.
Where are we at with pricing?
So you can get it, like I mentioned, with the standard range. That's like your entry level, so to speak, and that's just under $50,000 with delivery before incentives, et cetera, if any apply. When you start getting into the extended range, you get just over 50 grand, and then they top out around 60-ish thousand. So it is something to consider as well. In terms of size, think Nissan Rogue. If you need like a good comparison point there, I mean the Rogue is 180 something, like 183 inches overall. It's on a wheelbase of 106 inches. I got that part written down. The Ariya
it has a very like Rogue Sport-esque
in a way
silhouette to
and
it.
And it's essentially the same length, 183 inches long, and the wheelbase is 109 inches. So I mean, it's very comparable to a Rogue in size if you need a good like comparison point there, but obviously it's all electric.
Well, I guess we'll see where Nissan kind of goes with the Ariya, and then also where they go next, since they're going to have
GT
some
Ariya.
The GT Ariya.
Robinson's not impressed.
All right. Well,
Are they
let's.
going to put a number in there somewhere, random spot?
Yeah, they might. They might. Well, before we get to Greg talking about his time in the
Oh, man, what am I even here for?
surprising Mazda CX-90, let's move to our lightning round.
Wow, all right.
I'm sorry, Greg.
Okay.
I'll just show up late to the
yeah.
next podcast.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting topic. Ford has filed a patent for a system that would be able to self-repossess autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicles. So depending on the level of autonomy, the system could allow a vehicle to move itself to a spot that would be easier to be towed, or eventually it would just be able to drive itself to a designated area by a repo or lending company. Now, this can't exactly be a surprise to many people hearing that Ford would, or any automaker would patent something like this, but should we be alarmed at how technology in cars can be used?
I'm so alarmed. I'm about to bust out laughing. Honestly,
Yeah,
just reading these. Like I knew about this, but when the way you read it, just I wanted to laugh so hard.
Yeah, like when I first read this, I thought it was a bit. I thought it was.
You thought
just
it was
funny.
like an SNL.
I was like, that's kind of funny. And then I was like, and I had like seen it before I saw this on the podcast, and I was like, oh, like I love the blue oval. Not sure if this is the move. But to answer the question of like, should we be alarmed at how technology is being used? I mean, just in large, yes. I don't think we should be afraid of the advancement of technology because it's going to happen regardless, whether you like it or not. But I mean, even looking at other examples like, paying a subscription to have heated seats, for example, like that's now possible because of the technology that we're putting in cars. And it obviously people don't like that, right? I think this is another example of something that people probably aren't going to like. I get why they want to do it. I get why the technology is being investigated, but I don't think people are going to like it. I kind of don't like it, to be honest.
I don't think anybody's.
It creeps me out. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the idea is funny. I can definitely see some sketches being made about these cars just being driven away.
Yeah.
It certainly alarms me. Doesn't surprise me that a company would do this. I find it hard to ever side with major corporations, so I certainly don't like it from that standpoint. Yeah, I mean it's that, and you throw in all this stuff you're hearing about AI recently. Not to get too far off topic, but I think actually Alex put it really nicely. There's a lot of things you should be excited about with advancement in technology, but I think it certainly needs to be kept in check by the people. We being those people.
Yeah, it's like the whole pay with your wallets kind of thing, which granted I know is easier to say when, like, because, as a car, not everyone's necessarily going to go out and buy a car, let alone a Ford. But, like, yeah, I mean, let them know that you don't like it.
Ford is just the only person doing this right now.
Yeah,
Everyone
right.
will be able to have the capability eventually.
Well, they've patented this system. It doesn't mean they're going to use it.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't mean
they're
about to
But
repossess
it proves they've
everyone's
at
cars.
least thought about it.
But
it's on their minds.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I don't know if we should be alarmed or not. We should definitely be aware of it, but there seems to be any technology, people just go all in on it, regardless of the consequences. Sure. And whether it takes their freedoms, whether it opens up these kind of doors, there's no stopping it. People just want whatever tech they can get.
I mean, it's sort of in the same, it's not in the same vein, but it's like, automakers, they have remote access to our new cars for the most part. I mean, look at GM's OnStar system, right?
Just make your payments. You don't have to.
I mean, that too. Yeah.
I'm thinking like, why even risk the idea of like an autonomous drive from wherever your car that is being repossessed is to where you want it to be? Why can't we just make a feature where it just like locks all the systems where it is physically impossible to drive the car?
I do like the other part of it though, where it's like, it can move it to a spot it's easier to be towed. Like, in terms of repossession, like going back to that, it's like, I still not crazy about it, but I could see that also being used maybe in a good way. Like, what if there's, I don't know, something happens with the car, there's an accident or something, and the driver is not there to move the car, the key's not present. A emergency worker or a tow truck operator, highway safety needs to be able to move the car. If there's a way for them to contact Ford or the dealer or whatever. I don't know how this would work. I don't know if it's even necessary, but I can see where there can be good in technology like this. I just want to know, when are we going to get to AI generating cars for us? When are we going to get AI generated cars?
Do you want an AI?
No,
They
but
can't even generate like fingers. Like
I know,
directly.
but like,
I don't
man,
want
well,
an
that's why,
AI-generated
again, it's
car.
the bit. I'm here for the
Okay.
bit.
Sorry.
I think it'll be funny.
All right. Well, let's move on to our viewer question. This is an email from Michael. He says that, or I should quote what he said. He said, I was watching the Volkswagen Golf GTI Autobahn segment, and I noticed that the driver had both windows open during the track tests in Savannah. What's the reason for that?
It's hot in Savannah. No.
Not when we're there.
It's something that is not uncommon at racetracks where they will request that you put windows down just in the event of an accident, rollover. There's just less glass being thrown in your face. I don't believe it is a requirement at Savannah. We've always done it because, again, we also don't run with air conditioner, so it is nice to have some air moving in through the system. And then, of course, like hearing things on the outside is always good. But I will tell you the truth that the faster cars get and the more aerodynamic they get, I've noticed more and more wind buffeting. So we come down the straights now regularly at 150, 160, sometimes even 170 miles per hour. And the air that's coming in and the turbulence created by it has made it's for me very hard to keep my head straight physically because there's so much of it. It's to the point where I have to put the windows up on a couple of cars. So you'll see on the test that some of the cars do have windows up, but I would say most of them probably have them down.
Yeah, it kind of is definitely a safety thing. But as you notice, the cars have gotten so aero dependent, it's almost impossible to drive some of them with the windows down. I do drive with the AC on, though, sometimes, so whatever. Maybe that's just me. But the opposite of that is when we do acceleration runs, we have the windows up to get the best aerodynamics and also have no AC on at that time. So sometimes it gets very hot in the cars.
Well, I'm going to start turning AC on.
On the road course, what does it matter? Yeah.
Well, wasn't it?
I never thought about it.
He's just hopping in and going. Well, you guys are out there sometimes for, isn't it like 8 to 10 laps at a time?
I couldn't tell you how many laps I do.
Sometimes I don't even have time to figure out what drive mode, much less play with the
I just started
controls.
putting the radio on towards the end of runs because,
smart,
like, yeah, well, Rage Against the Machine comes on. I just got to turn it up.
Well, I think there was one car that we had this year at Roebling that with its in it. I don't know if we could like turn off some of its like emergency braking or the safety functions.
Yeah.
AMG,
So
like in the middle of the corner, it threw on some emergency situation.
Well, it would,
braking.
and if you like braked really hard, the windows, if you had
That's
the down, would come
that's
up.
what it was.
So sometimes the car doesn't even let us do it.
One definitely braked on me too. Can't remember which one it was. Didn't brake. It like put on the brakes.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for asking that question, Michael. And if you want to ask a question, you can email us at motorweek@pbs.org.
Or just walk on up and find us.
Or
just ask
I
us
don't
a
know
question.
about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm all about that for sure.
Anyway, so let's finish up with Greg here, who was in California.
Better be good. We made us wait.
Yeah.
for
Sorry. Yeah.
Not sure I can live up to it, but I'll.
Mazda has surprised us, and we actually just recently talked about this on another podcast because it was a very quick time between when it was revealed and then when we were actually able to drive it. But Greg has driven the Mazda CX-90, which is kind of a surprising product from Mazda. Tell us about it.
Surprising if you haven't paid a lot of attention to where Mazda is going recently. They've clearly decided that they want to go more upscale. More premium. I'll get into the whole luxury versus premium debate later, but they are certainly separating themselves from Toyota, Honda, and now they're getting closer to like the Lexuses, Infinitis, Acuras in terms of just general materials and what they see their cars as, or SUVs in this situation. So CX-90, it is not the 9. This will be replacing the 9. eventually. But right now, if you look through their SUV lineup, they have the CX-3, the CX-30, the CX-5, the CX-50, the CX-9, the CX-90. So right now, there's just like a whole bunch of SUVs in their lineup.
And a gap too, because there's nothing in between the 5 and the
Yeah,
9s
they
now.
had the 7 for a while years ago. Now it's just the 5 to the 9. But the 90 is 8 inches longer in terms of wheelbase than the 9, but only 2 inches longer in overall length. So there is a little bit of extra space, but there's not a ton. I mean, like rear, third row leg room goes up a tad, second row also, but it's really not much. And it's still technically a mid-size SUV. A lot of people I saw commenting on our video that saying it's a full size. Maybe 10, 20 years ago it would be a full size, but now it's a mid-size. It is in either a 6, 7, or 8 passenger configuration. Standard, I believe, is 8. Either way, you can kind of mess around with that. You can get captain's chairs in the second row. And in both the cars that we tested, or both SUVs, they were captain rows in the second row. I've owned a lot of Mazda, so I like to know, or I think I like to know how Mazdas drive. This is the most exciting thing, is that this still drives like a Mazda. Very tight steering. The suspension is just very well sorted out. Again, we were in San Francisco, out in California for this press event, driving on some of the higher speed highways with lots of twists and turns. It's just so sorted out, so confident, comfortable too. But more importantly, or at least more notable, is probably the powertrain department, starting off with a 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder engine.
He's so excited about it.
Yeah, I started salivating. Inline 6-cylinder engine, which is just all the rage. To me, when I heard that, I thought, okay, well then now they're putting BMW and Mercedes in their sights, because they're the ones who put that powertrain in their SUVs. So that engine actually comes in 2 versions. It's the same engine. One is a high output, one is the standard output. Standard output is 280 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque. If you go with the high output, it is 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. What Mazda likes to do is they give you a premium fuel rating and a regular fuel rating.
Yeah.
So those higher numbers at 340 horsepower is the premium. If you go to regular fuel, which they say is still recommended, you're only going to get 319 horsepower. So not a huge deal, but I feel like it's worth noting. That is out also on a 48-volt mild hybrid architecture. So it's technically a hybrid, just not like a full-on hybrid. They have a electric motor built into the 8-speed automatic transmission. It basically functions as like a starter generator type thing. Which leads me to the second powertrain, which is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, otherwise known as a PHEV. Instead of the inline 6, it uses a 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated, 323 horsepower, so not as much as the turbo, but it has the same amount of torque, 369 pound-feet. It's one of those systems where you can use electric-only driving range. It's rated at 26 miles at a full charge. Of course, you can charge it while you're driving. You can also set it to charge specifically. So say you're going to be doing a lot of highway driving and you want to leave the battery charged at 50%. So you can set, all right, I want it to stay at 50% all the time. That way it will get it to 50, but you're not relying on the motor or the engine the entire time. So you can recoup some fuel economy there.
Do they have fuel economy numbers out yet?
Fuel economy, no, not for the PHEV. I'd have to double check on the. It wasn't anything stellar with the turbo models, but PHEV, the only thing they have is the fuel or the EV range at 26. No fuel economy numbers yet on that. I felt like the PHEV, the instant torque from a stop isn't that notable. I felt like on the highway, when you wanted to pass somebody, you get this like instant hit of torque, which to me is incredibly useful on the highway. But the 2 powertrains are, again, just the refinement is what they're going for, especially with the inline 6. It's just the benefit of that is the torque. You get more torque with an inline 6, and it's also just a more refined experience. Go ahead, Mr. Robinson, with your hand raised.
Are they all-wheel drive? Or
They are
just
all all-wheel drive, and they all have 8-speed automatic.
standard
transmissions.
across the board?
Standard
all-wheel
across
drive.
the board. Another little weird, not weird, but interesting aside. I was talking to one of their powertrain guys, and you think of the benefits of an i6 of being. It's also rear-wheel drive base, by the way. So all-wheel drive,
Yep.
but it's based rear-wheel drive, which means that engine is pointed longitudinally, front to back. Like I said, rear-wheel drive base. But so they were able to move that engine further back, which obviously helps balance of the vehicle. But when you have a transverse-mounted engine or a V, those front frame rails generally are bent, which is, as I've learned, is a very inefficient structure, talking about frame rails. So when they go to an inline engine, they can make those straight, which helps with crash protection, but also helps with turning diameter. So it's actually the turning diameter, even though this is a longer wheelbase, is better than the CX-9 just basically because of those frame rails allowing the wheels to turn at a more severe angle. So back to the whole idea of Mazda going upmarket, they're certainly approaching like German levels of luxury. I can't say that this is a full-on luxury vehicle because it just isn't, but it's now competing with the Infinities and the Lexuses, I think. They're certainly trending in the right direction. Drive dynamics, I think they are like very close to what you'd get from a BMW or a Mercedes. But if you're looking for like a full-on luxury, you're not going to get it with Mazda. But if you're looking for a step above, like a Toyota, Nissan, Mazda is just really kind of up their game in terms of material quality and just general refinement.
So since this is a 3-row utility, it kind of is going, and you said it's still mid-size, right? So
Still mid-size,
that means
so it goes up against Highlander.
Brand
Highlander.
Telluride, Palisade, stuff like that. So, is there any like compromise in like cargo capacity or like folding things flat with like the
Everything
HEV
folds
model?
flat. You still get. I don't have the exact numbers on me. Third row up in its upright position. There's not much space, but that's basically par for the course here in the midsize area. But everything folds flat, second rows. So if you need to store something a little bit bigger and you don't need to carry that many passengers, it's more than capable. Also 5,000 pounds of towing with the turbo 6-cylinder, 3,500 with the PHEV.
Okay. Wow. All right. That seems like Greg got really lucky because the day before he went on that trip, it
There was flooding.
flooded.
They had videos
It
of
actually
hail.
flooded.
It was like a nightmare apparently. So
That was a very comprehensive, Greg. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
yeah, I'm glad I actually had the extra time at the beginning of the podcast to prepare myself.
Well, now, does anybody have a rant or rave?
I always do. But I want.
This is usually me,
yeah.
but
Well,
I don't get to have one this week.
So I've been taking my car seats in and out of cars more often lately.
Yes, you have. I've seen it.
Just for fun, or
No, out of
Okay,
necessity.
all right.
I realize it's not a major issue for most people, but I don't. Why are there's such a difference in how manufacturers do their child anchors. Some are like right there, easy to get to. Others are like you got to dig into the seat to try and get it. Again, like I hate it's like standardization. Like why can't it just be standard? I know like they want things to look nice and all
And
that
from a
stuff.
safety
But,
aspect
like-
too, you
but,
would
like,
think, why aren't they standard?
Think about like a luxury automaker who would like really put a focus on things looking good. But BMW has some of the best child anchors available. They just like put them out there for you to see. Like I don't know. I like again just not
Well,
a big deal.
who do you think does it the best?
BMW.
That
BMW does a
best.
great job with it. Who does it some of the worst? Probably Kia. They put it even in my 08 Sportage. They bury those things in the seat in that crack. It's just impossible. I know. Not everybody's taking their car seats in and out.
No, but people are like there's people. You have a unique job because you're in different cars all the time, but I think there are plenty of people out there who are constantly juggling around car seats. Maybe not so much as before, because a lot of those car seats have like bases now, so people just like have the base in a car, buy 2 bases, right? Is
Yeah,
that
but
how
that's
a lot
only
of people
for
do
like
it?
infants. When they
Is
get
that-
older, when they get older, then
Needs a
it's
bigger
then you got to put them in an actual seat, and then like now you're supposed to keep them backward.
Yes,
for
rear facing.
a long time, like at least till 2.
I've seen
Which is
people
a
do it to
bummer
like
for me
4.
because my 2-year-old is the size of a 3-year-old, so it's really tough getting him backward.
My kid's 19. I still make him sit backwards.
Do you have him in like the old wagon where you had those seats that face backwards? Those were great.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, Greg, and Alex. That was a great, lively discussion today. And I also want to thank our audio engineer, Austin Harris. I'll give myself a pat on the back for being the podcast
You want me to thank
producer.
you instead of you thanking
Yeah,
you?
how about you go?
I'd like to thank our podcast producer, Jessica Ray.
Thank you. And of course, we'll thank our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And we want to thank all of you for listening to the MotorWeek podcast. If you want to find more MotorWeek, you can always head on over to motorweek.org. There's a lot of stuff on there. If you want to watch MotorWeek, we're on PBS stations across the country. You can see us for free on pbs.org/MotorWeek. Or, as I like to tell people, just download the PBS video app and you can watch every new episode of MotorWeek for free on your phone, on your iPad, on your smart TV. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's awesome. And you can also find us on YouTube. Every Thursday we post a retro review if you are in the mood for some retro John Davis telling you the scoop on cars that you forgot existed.
Make sure to watch our marathons we do, the live ones. I dropped in on one this weekend.
Yes.
You never know. Maybe you'll get to talk to me.
Yeah, Greg
bore you
might
with
be there. Yeah, when he's got nothing else going on.
Rant or rave.
It's usually just me and Benny D making fun of each other.
We usually have retro marathons at the beginning of the month, so stay tuned. We just had one, and we'll probably have one at the beginning of May. So we want to thank all of you for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.